Yvonne and Jit reached out to me about 3 months ago to ask me to speak about sales, B2B sales. Then I was thinking, hey, I think I'm in trouble because from my point of view, I think I'm the worst sales guy in the world. And there's a reason why I'm saying this, and I'll explain later. But then later on, as I thought more about this, hey, this is not about like sales 101, how to do pitches, how to drive conversion, how to like, you can learn that on your own. There are a lot of materials online. But this is more about how do you build a sales organization, define the sales strategy, build a sales operation process, and how do you drive conversion across the funnel, right? So I guess based on that, I think I'm pretty comfortable talking about this. So a little bit about my background. I started my career in Asia as a management consultant, probably 15 years ago, focusing on financial services, telco, media, and technology. Worked a lot on like customer strategy, sales strategy across financial services, telco, media, technology. Afterwards, I also managed like a sales organization, I guess as like a GM or a assistant GM. Your role is always about sales, right? How do you bring in the revenue? How do you manage the top line? How do you manage the bottom line? So that includes setting up the sales team, uh, focus driving the revenue and like bottom line targets. Um, and now I represent Microsoft. Our big focus is on AI. So it's about how do we identify the market opportunity, how do we target the right audience, and then how do we build a team and a sales motion to drive conversion. So I guess before I go into the presentation, I thought that we can make this session more interactive also. Can I just ask everybody, like I guess everybody are founders, but kind of what industry you are, what are you guys focusing more on B2B, and like what do you hope to get out of this like session today? Then I can try to tailor my message. Yeah, just super quickly.
Yeah, hi, David. I'm Jackson. I'm working on sports industry, and I'm targeting business customers. Yeah.
Hi, we are doing a agentic workflow for healthcare, targeting hospitals and all the healthcare providers.
Hi, I'm doing manufacturing actually, industry. So we are targeting on B2C right now, but we want to move to B2B.
Interesting.
Hi, so we're doing BPO facilitation on our end. So platform model, but we control the infrastructure and platform as well.
Hi, I'm doing MedTech, focusing on B2B as well as B2C.
Okay.
I'm doing EdTech, so education tech, and working on schools, so how to sell to them would be nice.
Amazing.
Thank you. B2B healthcare also.
Okay. Healthcare seems to be very hot right now.
AI product for service businesses, B2B.
Amazing.
Hello, we are developing the job matching platform, B2B and B2C. Yeah.
Okay.
We are a software as a service, B2B, and our clients are property managers.
Okay.
So we're a FinTech, but also a SaaS platform for community-based organizations. So B2B on the community side, B2B on the financial services side.
See also. Yeah.
So I'm building AIoT system for healthcare sector as well, for more B2B. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, we are in the cybersecurity world. We are doing B2B, targeting more towards the medium to large enterprises.
Amazing.
It's a SaaS platform for fitness businesses, mainly B2B.
Okay, great.
I'm in B2B edutech. B2C edutech. Yeah.
B2C. Okay.
We do health and wellness drinks. So we have both B2C, but we've actually been doubling down on B2B.
Great. Amazing. Hi.
I'm in B2B education tech.
Amazing. Okay, so a lot of HealthTech, EduTech, SaaS, security, ISV. Okay, great, perfect. So I'm glad. I wanted to ask because this is not like a how do you sell session. This is about how do you build a sales organization. So I think if there's one, so let's start with the strategy. How do you build a B2B sales strategy? So this is kind of a strategy on the page. if there's one key takeaway from this message today, is that B2B is really centered on value creation. So as with any strategy, there's usually three audiences that we think about: company, capability, and also your client. So I just want to ask everybody, between company, right, your capability, and also the client, between these three, and you can only raise your hand once, which do you think is the most important? Do you think is who thinks is company? Like your branding in terms of succeeding in B2B sales. Do you think it's company? Do you think is your client? Or do you think it's the capability or the solutions that you're building? If you can only pick one, that's like probably the most important. Who thinks it's company? Okay, great. Interesting. Why? Yep. Amazing. Yep. Yep. And your credibility, your traction is your I guess is your funnel, right? Great. Okay, good. Okay. Who thinks is your capability or your solutions? How differentiated it is? That's true. I would agree for your company. Okay. And then everybody else thinks it's client. So I think if we look at the three, I think we will always try to start with the client. I think if you take a step back, right, how do you build a sales strategy from the beginning? We always like to start with the client because it's about how well we understand their pain points and their priorities. And the focus in the B2B sales value creation is about how do you incrementally add value by accelerating their strategic priorities. Because if you don't understand the pain points, we can't define it, we can't address it. It's almost a non-starter, right? Then once you define that, then your capability, your solution, including your marketing message, would be tailored around how do you unlock that based on the use cases, based on their life cycle, and then you can align your sales operations around that. Once you have these two in line, I would agree with JP, then your company, right? How do you, achieve your mission, your vision, and how do you grow that market share based on the reputation, right? So I think in terms of KPIs, the way that we think about client, at least in Microsoft, is usually about how do we measure the success of the clients. So there are specific KPIs that you should think about how you can set it. And then in terms of capabilities, it's almost about internal, right? What are the operating metrics, value delivered that you can set against this? And then for company, in a sales context, is about how do you measure their funnel metrics, right? So I think at a super high level, for client, it's really about understanding the customers, who are your segments, like how do you think about your market, what are the pain points in each of the segments, how does the market look like? Is it like super large clients? Is it long tail? Do you think about partnering through channel partners? And then based on that, how do you segment this? And then how do you prioritize? And how do you plan your go-to-market? And then for each segment, you have to think about how do you tailor your client messages, right? And then for each, obviously you have to find an executive sponsor. I'll talk a little bit about this later. I think this is something that we do well in. In terms of capability, it's really about unlocking value in the use cases and making sure that you drive top of mind and also aligning your sales operations against this, right? So how do you define your use cases? How do you define your sales strategy around the use cases and across the life cycle? How do you identify the need? How do you prove your capability? And then once you've proven your capability, how do you expand the scope, right? And then, of course, once you have that, you can define the sales stages, you can refine that capability, you can build a team around this, and then you can measure like the conversion, the metrics, and then try to optimize, right? And then so that kind of goes into number three. So success for the company is really about how do you put it like more bluntly, how do you deliver on your sales goals, right? Your top line, how do you identify, consider, trial, convert, and then whether or not the best proof point is you can kind of like build the market share, you have a bottom line impact, but sometimes it's also about shareholder value, right? I go back to JP's point, is it about, sometimes you might want to build like hallmark clients that build your reputation around, and then, the immediate focus is not driving like a massive funnel of sales, but finding the 1 or 2 clients that help you reach the credibility. So I think it depends on, a lot of this depends on your own needs and your context, right? So I think that's the high level sales strategy on the page, but focusing on value. So I think secondly, so let's start with the client. This is just one specific for Microsoft. I apologize if this is like less on B2C. There are usually different types of like sales scenarios. Usually like, for us, especially in tech, a lot of it is about investing upfront, shifting from CapEx to OpEx. So it's really about sustaining growth. But it can also, in the B2C context, it could also mean how do you address a new segment for like a supermarket or retailer, unlocking a new segment, right? So it depends on how you tailor to your message. Again, for a more specialized or vertical SaaS, it could be about meeting a specific objective or addressing a pain point, or like something more encompassing, like a company like Microsoft, obviously, is like broad transformation where you involve like what we call every room of the house, right? So there's from the CEO all the way to the business unit functional heads, the CTO and the CIO. The aligned theme for each, I'll let you guys take a picture about this, is slightly different. It's really about understanding the stakeholders, but the idea is that there are different sales scenarios that you want to address, identify each of the decision makers, and then build themes around it. So I can elaborate a little bit more about this later. So I think in terms of the capability, I think this is probably the more interesting part. So I think across the 7 stages, the most important one, you start with to identify the pain points, right? And again, this is a very important exercise because you want to break down segment by segment, focusing on your customers' like key success criteria or the KPIs, and then think about how your products align to their story. Like, how do you create a win-win for yourself and also for the company? So I think that's the ideal scenario. Think about how your solutions can make them successful, and then focus all around that. Secondly is how do you set your sales strategy? So I think we talked a little bit about this earlier, right? Is your strategy direct B to big B? Is it B to long tail B? Is it B to B2C, where you have a long list of channel partners? So you kind of have to define your client segments based on industry size, value, geography, unique needs. And then you have to define that. Once you have the segmentation, you have to define the definition of success, and then think about the long-term value, right? For the for that segment. So that comes with your sales strategy. Third one is about, for each segment, how do you generate leads and demand? So, this is the traditional funnel, right? Marketing, referral, inbound, outbound. Depends on your strategy and how big and how complex your business is. You can try to cherry pick and prioritize, usually like 2 or 3 out of like the 6 or 7. So lastly, in this process, it's about how do you deepen and cultivate the relationship. So for every organization, there's usually a couple of like sponsors that are super interested in what you have to offer. You have to, basically they'll become your best friends. They're sponsors. These people usually help you get the signals, focus on the end goals, explain their organization to you, their decision-making process, their evaluation. For more complex solutions, they'll also give you insights about, where you rank against the competition. So, once you have this, you can kind of like build a conversion plan, if that makes sense. So before I talk about, who focuses on what, I'll walk through the 7 stages first. So I think once you have identified the sponsors, you have to, once you know who you want to target, you kind of have to align to their values across the key decision makers, right? What are their priorities? What is their existing process like? What are the pain points? How do you address their impediments and concerns? And then the whole focus is about propensity. How do you move from a no to a maybe, from a maybe to a yes? And then how do you align your goals together, right? Then afterwards, the best thing to do, obviously some people you can go straight to a sales and conversion. So, usually in like in tech, we focus on trial or activating a portion of the solution, like a POC or POV. So it's about value realization. And then afterwards, assuming the trial goes well, then you optimize, you expand, you increase the customer life cycle, lifetime value, and then how do you aggregate additional demand? So I think in Microsoft, we have 3 sales teams. We start with the account team. We also have a solution or product team. So who are the real experts and the real sales team. And then the last part is the customer success. This is not customer service, it's customer success. This is also a sales team for us. So I think in terms of the what we call the account team, the front, the tip of the spear, we do everything from identifying the pain points, setting the strategy, understanding the market, generating the demand, finding the key stakeholders, and then deepen the relationship to map the entire strategy, right? So this is essentially, when you have an account team, these are the hunters, right? But it's the best ones are also the strategists. Sorry, JP. Yeah, so hunter. Yeah, so these are the hunters, right? People that are kind of assertive, that are pathfinding, understanding the market, reading between the lines, right? So then the second team, or the solution team, or the product team, or the real sales team, right? They're really there to understand. Once you understand their pain points, you want to focus on their value, and that's where you go deep to really align your solutions on your trial. Their goal is to slowly convert and to kick off like a POC, right? To land, or in this case, close a deal, right? So these are the really aggressive. So it's a balance of both like a hunting and farming. And then, once your trial's off the ground, there's only one team that really focuses on, of course, both teams are involved, but the main PIC, or people responsible, are customer success. How is the solution doing? How is this impacting their organization? What are the existing pain points that are not addressed? How do you create more value, right? I think through this process, when you find more opportunities, this helps you refine trust, and this also generates additional demand. So their goals are mostly like farming, if that makes sense. So I'll pause here for now. It's a lot of information. Any thoughts or questions so far? Can. Some. So I can share the first half. The second half, I pull from our internal source. I won't tell you what the solution is, but you can probably guess. But I'll be walking through a live end-to-end sales cycle with you guys after this. So this is basically building your strategy, converting, and then also expanding, right? So this is kind of end to end. In terms of one of the questions is also about, hey, B2B sales cycles are long and complex, right? How do you navigate this? So it boils down to 3 things. First is about prioritization. There's so many customers that you can focus on. Which one do you target first? Second is about your operations. How do you set up your organization? And then third is to align the goals to the strategy. So start with the prioritization. There's always a metrics. How important is your solution or your offering to the client? And then how much value do you deliver, right? So essentially, you want to be in an area where there's high importance, and then it's kind of like they don't know that they need this opportunity, so there's an unmet need, right? So that's where this is kind of the low-hanging fruit. Whereas there's a already super high demand, but then it's also highly important. Everybody will be in this area, so it will be extremely competitive, right? So secondly, how do you also manage a sales pipeline? If you have 100 clients, right? Who do you focus on? How do you do that? So I think there's usually 2 functions, like how critical is your solution to the client, how difficult it is to convert them. Usually the biggest deal tend to be the largest, the most complex, the most competitive segment, which requires investment. You need to align a lot of stakeholders. So the idea is to find the sponsors to move the difficulty from high to low. And then they're also easier to convert, but they tend to be really small, right? So that's kind of where the channel strategy comes in. Can you find partners that can, streamline the process to help have your partner become your sales and distribution arm, right? So the idea is to, ramp these deals through, And then, the ones that you focus on are the low-hanging fruits, right? The ones that are high impact, but like not as difficult to convert. But of course, if this is available, everybody will be focusing on it, right? So that's kind of like how, typically the simplest way we think about this. And then in terms of sales strategy, right? Again, like these are the typical criteria that people think about when they define the prioritization, who the competitors are, how you rank relative to the competition. If you've done sales before, usually salespeople like to prioritize the ones that are easiest to close, because they always say like egg in the basket is better than like two eggs that are like not in the basket, right? So salespeople also tend to prioritize like how ability to close, not to generate demand, but actually convert into revenue, right? Then the third one is actually your customer segments, how easy it is for you to address. And then fourth is your sales team's relationship, your ability to influence. Fifth is like how aligned is your solution to the industry vertical. So I guess for the edutech, for the healthcare ones, that's obviously like more obvious. Your lead source is also important, depends on your funnel, your campaign, opportunity type, product, geography. I think everything else is like self-explanatory, right? So typically these are the criteria that you would set to see like which ones are the most important for you in terms of the funnel metrics, and you build sources around this. I think this is just one example in our org. Like, we found that, hey, revenue deal size are the ones that like salespeople kind of prioritize. The sales stage is also quite interesting. So remember, like when we looked at the sales stages, like from identifying, setting the strategy, generating demand, align value, optimize, from 1 to 7, like hypothetically, I think, over time, we also see that, hey, the ones that are like more mature, the sales teams also tend to focus because they're trying to generate results, right? I guess this is also more important for startups like yourself. And then time period is how long I guess this the time the selling cycle, then the closing probabilities, the ability to convert, individual sellers and sales representatives relationship. I guess that's their confidence, right? So you can see that the top 5 is almost like the most important, and then the opportunity, competition, segments, activities, marketing, everything else is kind of like industry agnostic and less important. So in a pure sales organization, usually unfortunately, people tend to focus on the revenue, and then everything else, right? This is also like tier 1 consideration. But again, I would implore you to think about this slightly differently, because this is in a pure sales context. But in a pure value creation context, where you're new to the market, you're trying to set up your credibility and your reputation, your goal might be very different. It could be making that one customer super successful, making your solution super entrenched, so you can build marketing, trust, branding, motion around, right? So you have to kind of prioritize this. So I guess based on this, let's maybe I pause before I walk through like a live example of like one of our solutions and end to end. Any questions, thoughts, concerns, criticisms? Go ahead. Average sales what? This is a very tough question, because we have over like a few thousand products, right? So, for something like Windows, or Office, the demand is there. So people reach out to you, then it's just like how quickly can you give them a contract, right? For something like AI, I think the market is also more mature. Usually in AI, for example, companies tend to pick the best solution because the cost of AI to deploy, to run, is actually quite low. Unless you're bootstrapped, I mean, like companies tend to go quite fast. Not super long, but something like CRM, for example, right, where there's a lot of integration, changing the process, it could anywhere take months to like couple of years. Again, we also have like massive like $100 million contract that can take anywhere from like 6 months to a couple of years. Cedric? So good question. Again, it depends on the product. So it's MNCs, SMEs, and governments. Governments tend to be more complex because there's an official RFP process unless your solution's like extremely unique. But again, there are exceptions. So it tends to be longer. MNCs depends on the decision-making process and whether or not you can identify the what we call like the decision maker, the budget owner. Sometimes some organizations are quite slow because a lot of different people need to approve, and then there are conflicting interests. Sometimes it could be quite fast because if you identify the right stakeholders, it can happen immediately. Like so, even for me, I'm handling a portfolio of like 15 different like clients or partners. Probably like I would say like 60% quite fast. They know exactly what they want. It's just about pulling in the resources to help them like build out what they need to do and then go into execution mode. Some are like, a couple of like super big ones. Everyone is trying to, go after, right? So for example, the likes of Grab, the likes of like C Group, you're competing against everyone. So you kind of have to run through a beauty contest unless your solution is very unique. You understand their pain points super well. So that tends to be longer, anywhere from a couple of months to 6 months. But MNCs, yeah, I mean, government similar. It depends. So a couple months to 6 months. SMEs, sometimes they could be smaller. I mean, sorry, faster. But then again, they may not be as mature in understanding the solution, right? And then also, they have to think about, do they prioritize your solution or do they prioritize others? Sometimes it could be quick. Sometimes it could be small. Usually, I think in terms of Microsoft context, we try to leave that prioritization with our partners because SMEs is a very long tail for us, right? Because we both basically work with like most companies in the world. So our partners, whether they're focusing on geography, their segments, they will be able to prioritize, I mean, they basically represent Microsoft, right? So I think usually once the partners come in, the conversion is actually quite fast. So our sales organization is quite mature, if that makes sense, because the partner really prioritize and did the envisioning, the solutioning for us. If that. Correct. Yeah, so you have to think about like your prioritization, difficult to convert impact to clients, and then also there's a third dimension which is like volume, right? Is there an overlay that you can wrap like a strategy around, then you can address. Then within each you have like a total addressable market. Then you have to think about how difficult it is to convert and things like that. It depends on the solutions. Very is very industry or company specific. Yeah. Yeah. So like maybe I can also like speak from a Microsoft point of view, but also from another company's point of view. There's two scenarios, right? One is like you already know that there's a pain point, like the market. There's a pain point in the market, is well known. Then you create a product, then that's like quite seamless, right? It's just about marketing. Usually in that scenario, clients know about the solution before us. So we get bombarded. Our teams get bombarded with questions about it, and then they want to try. They want to try it, and then we just activate it for them, right? And then you just set a couple of people or partners to monitor. The second one's more interesting, probably more relevant for you guys. I think a very good example of this is like Apple, right? But like before the first iPhone came out, people didn't know that they need iPhones. How do you generate that demand, right? I think that's a little more interesting. I think for things like that, it's about speaking, like really understanding the client needs, the process, and then you map out the end-to-end journey. And then once your solution fits that criteria, you can help them inflect, either revenue or like bottom line or solution impact, I think that's where it really scales. That goes back into identifying the right stakeholders. Once you have this process here, then you can build your capability, your motion around, right? Including the marketing capability. But then I guess once you speak to the sponsors, you will know very quickly, where you need to tweak, where you need to optimize. Then the rest of the motion will become pretty seamless and straightforward. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I mean, it depends where you're coming from. No, honestly, that's a good question. Let me think about this. I think I can't speak from Microsoft point of view, but from my point of view, I mean, honestly, I would say like 80-90% we win, like 10-15% like we lose, and we lose for different reasons. We lose because either the product or offering is extremely like scarce, and we don't have, you have to prioritize like who to give this product to. So a good example of this would be like H100s, like your NVIDIA chips, right? We serve, OpenAI uses it, Microsoft uses it, sometimes our client use it. We also sell it to Facebook, right? Who do you give H100s to? So sometimes it's like fight for resources. And then sometimes it's also about price. Like for example, something like you really have to like define it, right? Like CRM, like we're competing against Salesforce, or like Power BI, we're competing against Tableau. But I think in most instances, when they're talking to us, they usually, or it's a heads up beauty contest. Usually, if it's an important client for us, we usually do pretty well. Again, product by product specific. There are a lot of levers that you can do. Sometimes we go as far as customizing a product for some of our clients, for the ones that are really important. Sometimes you can also tweak commercial levers, right? So I don't think that's like super difficult, but like I would say like about 10-15% we lose. Yeah. Can you elaborate? Honestly, as a listed company, like I can't comment, but you can imagine like as a listed company, I don't think any listed company like go into red. But again, like you can take like sometimes. I mean, like yeah, you can go like really close, but no company is gonna lose money unless it's like you. Of course, like you can look at the whole like it depends on how you substantiate it. You look at the whole like relationship, right? It can't just be hey one product you're losing everything. It has to come with something else, and the entire. Sometimes you look at cross solutions, if that makes sense. Sometimes we invest, of course. I mean, Microsoft invests upfront all the time, especially if it's like a new solution, right? So investment for us could mean investing in pilots, investing in deployment, investing in like licenses. But some are investable depending on the product. If it's like a new product, some like they're more mature, like super high demand, like Azure OpenAI, everybody's using it. Like it's impossible to get like trial licenses, right? Cool. Sorry. Sorry, like maybe I can tailor it to you. Can you tell me about your company again? Hmm. In terms of generating demand, the best way to do it is really hammer them. I mean, hammer the customer on the pain point. Like, how do you convert it from, this is a nice to have to a must have. Um, it depends. Like there are so many lenses here, right? Are there existing solutions? Like what are the substitutes available that they can have? Then you think about the cost and the time. Like you really have to understand the purchasing decision and the criteria. If it's like urgent, if it's like indispensable, then you can tweak the right lever. In general, there's a few ways to do this. If you tried everything right across the decision making process and you find that you're not making leeway, usually there's two more things that you can do. One is identify different stakeholders. It could be like other internal blockers, right? Conflicting interests, or your client, your target is trying to build their own solution, right? The second thing is you can also be speaking to the wrong stakeholder. Sometimes your stakeholder may not be the right decision maker, or they don't have the full empowerment, end-to-end empowerment to make that decision. But either case, you could try to tweak it, if that makes sense. But I think like it's probably more specific. We can catch up afterwards. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm gonna go into like a live example. I can't share this with you, but anyway, like the solution is not really like core Microsoft. It's one of our sister companies, so you can guess like what it is. I think you can tell by the color, like what the company is. So I took it from the like our knowledge base like this morning. So I think in terms of cycle, very similar, right? You can define it like whatever way you want, like stage one or discovery. Then it goes to proposal, validate it with the client, negotiate, commit. Then you either win or lose. And then once you have this like sales cycle, very important. I'm really glad that they delineate this. This is the last stage, right? Stage 7, which is expansion. How do you plan the pilot? How do you execute it? How do you measure it? How do you optimize to get the most value? So again, sorry, this is more tech and sales driven. So I think you can take photos if you want. I won't go into detail. I also didn't read this in detail, to be honest. So I think you can see that the key point is to really understand their needs, values, and behavior, and then leverage this relationship intro. Utilize the sales navigator. So I guess from this you can kind of like see what solution this is, and then like track it in the CRM. Then your discovery call, right? So I think this is the point that you raised earlier. How do we know the right audience? Like what are the roles? What are the concerns? What are the urgent priorities that they're trying to execute on? Can you explore, reconfirm the relationship with your sales team or your organization? Generating a value-driven hypothesis is very important, right? What is the single point of pain point that we're trying to address? And then, some tips on upselling and RFPs, going back to the question about your B2B and governments, right? So sometimes like, in not just for Microsoft, in any other organization, if you identify the scope and define it unique enough, usually you can remove the RFP process, or if your relationship's really close in my consulting period, you just write the RFP for them, and then you basically when again, not for Microsoft, in my consulting days, like you just write the RFP for them, and there's like almost no like you pretty much like you're gonna win the deal, right? So I think spend a lot of time on the discovery call. I think this is not only for their organization, but for Microsoft too. Like we really qualify super well. We expect our sales team to qualify super well, understand the budget, their timeline, because you don't waste your sales team's effort if they don't have a timeline that's not like immediate or urgent. Understand the definition of success, the purchasing criteria, the process, who are the key like decision makers, and then the profile and the strategy. Then you basically, this is what we call the qualification. And then of course we track this in our CRM tool, like end to end. Blueprint is like basically like capabilities like pitch books, frameworks that we have internally. And then like AE and AD are like the account team that I was telling you about. The first like 3-4 stages, the people defining strategy, and then CSM are the customer success managers, right? So the account team basically identify the contacts, buying groups, customer success teams also prospect identify customers, right, within existing buying groups. So it's really like a joint hunting and farming effort. So I think honestly, like Microsoft and our ecosystem company like does this super well. We have a very detailed process, but the process is not really focusing on like sales conversion. It's about really understanding the client pain points and addressing it like in detail end to end. So like we really believe in the like listen and consult methodology. So I think that's why I kept on emphasizing earlier that hey, focus on value, don't focus on the sales. If that makes sense. So I'll pause here. Questions? Approval process for what? You mean like for your sales organization or in Microsoft? Oh, so Microsoft is very straightforward. We tweak and optimize our go-to-market every single year. Like, the nice way to put it is, we redefine our go-to-market and we refresh our team every single year. So it's very process-driven, methodical. We review across the pipeline what's going well, what's not going well. How do we tweak it from our own sales team, but also through the channel partners, right? Once that's kind of set, there's some flexibility, but usually you stick to the process. It's pretty like I wouldn't say it's proven, but it works. If it doesn't work, like the team that we hire are usually pretty good. They'll find ways to make it work. If that makes sense. But of course, there are always exceptions, right? Things some deals are much more complex than what your existing team can cover. That's where we can pull in our virtual team. So for example, like my old team was a team of 7 direct that focuses on supporting like my ecosystem, but my virtual team could be as big as 150 or 200 people. Everything from LinkedIn, Xbox, corporate development where we invest in JV, or product groups like basically like what do we call it? Like modern work, Office, Windows, Power BI, AI, cloud, everything like product commercial managers. So the organization can be massive, right? Sometimes even our own CEO like gets involved. We're very close to our clients. We really want to understand their pain points and challenges. You have to do your account map to think about who's the right stakeholders to align to the right decision makers, right? So there's a very like mature process. Like I've never seen an organization does it so well before to really understand the pain points. Yeah, actually quite impressive. Okay, proposal. I guess maybe the best thing to do is just take a picture of this. I didn't really read it in detail, but I guess this is kind of straightforward. Let me see if there's anything interesting. Point the decision makers. Yeah, I think the important point is a lot of the deals are closed before it's made. I think that's the best and ideal scenario. Really identify the right purchasing criteria, evaluation criteria, and then build a solution or custom, like basically build a lever around it. Validations, getting the feedback. Going back to the earlier questions, like, when we have like 85, 90% conversion, it's really like about driving to the point of POC, proof of concept. But even after proof of concept is super, super rare that like it doesn't happen because we mobilize so well to get the feedback, customize, tailor it to make sure that like we get it through. Usually there's a lot of investment in resources, customization, like even funding to help deploy the solution for us. Thoughts or questions so far? Otherwise, I keep going. Negotiation. Negotiation is usually pretty straightforward. Sorry, go ahead. Which one? Which one's this? Consider version. Yeah, so this solution is for LinkedIn. So it's more specific to LinkedIn. It's just basically, US companies, they train you very well, very methodically. I think it's just telling them that, hey, there are materials for you. Like I guess if I was reading it, it's like, hey, how do you, entrench LinkedIn across the different type of stakeholders, and then there are probably materials to align it to stakeholder value, right? So, leverage the materials. Negotiations. You should only negotiate if there is win-win. You should only negotiate if you think you can win. Usually there's a confluence, like there's an overlap between win for you and win for your client. Otherwise, it's impossible to win, and don't even go to negotiate. So usually, when you have to align the win-win, it's just about like gives and takes. And investments on both sides. The easiest thing to do is just to define the terms on both sides, be open about it, and negotiate. Pretty straightforward, I think. Yeah. Commit. Commit, I think, in the sense, in the Microsoft ecosystem context, is they commit resources to adopt the solution, but also kind of customize build process around it on the POC, because usually the way that we do it is, hey, you run a small POC for a small group or a small function of the company, or expose it to a limited audience, and then you scale it. There's a very clear scaling timeline. We rarely do POC. We invest in POC where we expose it to a small group of audience, and then it doesn't have a clear plan to scale. If that makes sense. Close one, I think that's just more review. I think planning, is very important. I think that's where customer success comes in. Identify the goals and objective, target audience. How do you measure success? And then evaluate how effective the solution is, right? From conversion insights and whatnot. I think it's bringing a good point. Like you also have to coach and educate the customers, and then develop a launch plan. Sorry, I'm just reading this for the first time. As you can tell, I pulled it from the system, but relatively try to customize it, I would say. Execute, let's see, execute campaign launch plan, holding customer agency partner accountable. This is a good point. Sometimes the team executing is different than the decision makers. For example, the execution team on the ground like to set their own priorities, which may deviate from the key decision makers. So for a good example of this is, we align to deploy an AI solution with the business owner to cover scope A, B, and C. But the working team said, hey, it will be really interesting if we can do E also. But E is something that is very unique, requires proprietary research or investment. Then the working team basically said, hey, we don't want to execute A, B, and C until we have E. But how do you do that? So I think that's where you have to align on the scope very clearly with the key decision maker. Be very transparent and open, and holding not only Microsoft, our partners, but also the client's working team and the decision makers accountable. Otherwise, the budget, the target, the end goal will be constantly moving. That's very important. You have to what do we call this? You have to manage. Yeah, you have to manage the scope creep, or the deal control very, very carefully. Measurement, set the monitoring campaigns, look at each phase of the client workflow, and then set the metrics and KPIs in order to optimize, I guess. Okay, I'll let you guys take a picture. Again, this is super specific to that one solution. You have to set this for your own products and offering. This is just to give you an example of what it could be. Optimize, I think, review, identify, get some feedback, tweak, like I think clients love this. I think this is just more like review, like your success rate and your conversion rate. Okay, I think we have 5 minutes left. Went better than I expected. Go ahead.
Price? Yeah, and I feel this one is obviously enterprise. It's like a very proper enterprise with a lot of stages with forever sales, like I guess six months to like a few years, right? So how do you do this? Like on our level, we are doing SMEs and we understand this. I've done this also for 10 plus years. It is very painful. So we're trying to make this life cycle much shorter. And I came here to do exactly this. So like making it much shorter and trying to understand how to do this all in probably 1/10 of time. Yeah. So what would you advise?
I think in most instances, that's exactly how Microsoft thinks about this too. Because if you have to invest teams to focus on like deals that takes like 6 months to 12 months, like we're probably not going to survive, right? Our cost is extremely high. Like I think most of the like deals that we work on is usually quite fast. It's really about really understanding the pain points, finding the right stakeholders. And then again, because you're focused on SMEs, there's probably a long tail. You have to think about your sales and distribution channel. Finding the right partner is very important. Whether or not they have the addressable market for you to activate, and then it's about coming up with the right, I think, marketing materials, proof points and concepts, and have them generate the leads that can be converted by either by your client or by you. But usually our deals put like close within a day or even within a week. It's usually quite fast. Like I would say like majority of the time for us. We like maybe we need to like set up more one-on-one time. But honestly, like for the long tail is about building scalable sales processes for each segment and then finding the right partner or like building the right motion around it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, I was wondering about like re-engaging the cases or the deals that lost or are on the fence. Like how should we just like assume that it's lost and go for the next set of customers, or should we look at re-engaging them like after we've
So I'll speak from not my Microsoft experience, but from my consulting experience. Usually, when you're in a beauty contest, right? There's usually like 2 or 3, like you're up against like one key competitor. Usually, like in sales, you focus on conversion, so you do everything possible, unless you know that hey, they don't have a budget, their timeline's not immediate, or they're like or their goals are like wavering, right? But then at that time, you also know if your solution is competitive enough and what it requires to convert. So usually we try to put our effort to focus on the conversion, because the time that it takes to identify pain point, generate demand, to run through another RFP will probably be longer. But again, it depends on that particular client, how important it is to your company, right? To your sales strategy. But the reason why I would say focus on closing the clients also because if there are any gaps with your sales, marketing, product, execution, like you will also know, and it will probably happen again in the future. So
thank you so much, David.